my name is Scylla, and today this is going to be my classroom. So a while back I did a video talking about side hustles and how to make more money, and that video was specifically geared towards Lolitas because the shit we wear ain't cheap. But if you happen to stumble on this video as a non-Lolita, that is totally fine. If you're still interested, you're still welcome to watch. So in this list of gigs, I did mention coloring books, which I have some experience with. So I'm pretty much going to be explaining how you can do this too. Specifically on KDP for Amazon, because you can self-publish. It's very easy to do. Let's just go ahead and get started. So first thing is first, we're going to start with step 0, which is very important. No, not step 1. Step 0, I know my numbers, and what it is I would just advise anybody who's interested at all to do their research first. Go on Amazon, get an idea of what's trending, what exactly it is that you'll be competing with, as well as just an idea of all the different things that you can do. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and list some things right here because I wasn't aware just how many different niches of coloring books that you can actually make, despite me having, purchased coloring books like my entire life. But as you'll see, there is an option for like everything. So if you're only good at doing one of these things, that is totally fine. The point is to find something that you are most comfortable with. So for this example that I'm giving, I'm going to have mine be a kids coloring book, and I'm going to base it off of alpacas. So on to step 1, we're now going to talk about the tools that you need. So first and foremost, you need to be able to get your drawings onto a computer. I have an old iPad with an off-brand stylus pen that I got off of Amazon for I think like $20, and it's still working fine after a few years, so I see no reason to upgrade to like an Apple pen, which is super expensive. And if it ever dies on me, honestly, I'll probably just buy another one so that I don't have to spend so much. I did, however, purchase Procreate for $9.99, which is the app that I use on the iPad to draw. And I recommend it above all other drawing and art apps that I've used just because it makes things very simple and very convenient. But there are plenty of free drawing apps that work just fine with line art, which is really all you're going to be worrying about right now. If you don't have an iPad, I know people who prefer drawing at their computer using a tablet, and that works just as well. And if you're unable to do that as well, as a last resort, you can just draw on a plain white sheet of paper and then line it with a black marker and scan that. But there will be extra steps afterwards to make sure that it is purely black and white and neat. No smudges, no dark spots, nothing that'll make it look unprofessional. So all of these things are assuming that you're gonna want to use your own artwork in your book. However, you can still create a coloring book if you are not an artist, and you would do this by finding commercial use images. But this can be really hard, as it's hard to find similar art styles that work together and make a cohesive single book, unless of course you plan to pay for it. And while there are specific websites for that, I find that those kinds of things kind of oversaturate the market, and it can make it really hard to sell anything. But in addition to all the line art you will need, you'll also need a program on your computer that will be able to format everything, which I will come back to later on. So on to step 2, which is going to be the designing. So I believe that 8.5 by 11 is the standard coloring book size for most cases, but you can play around with that if you want. For this specific example, I'm going to be making mine 8 by 10. So because I'm drawing alpacas for small children, I'm also going to include some puzzles and activities to help fill up the pages. And it's important to note that Amazon doesn't allow you to have more than one blank page. In other words, if you have 30 pages, both the front and the back have to be filled with something, aside from one free page, which people usually place at the front or at the back. And the books that they print have more basic quality paper. So if you're making like an adult coloring book and it's ultra detailed, I probably wouldn't have the coloring pages back to back because you don't want anything to bleed through. And a way to get around this is basically on the back page you just have like the little description or a title for what it is, or just like, a little smiley face or something. So finally, when I've made all of my pages, I will choose from one of the drawings to color for the cover of the book. I think I'm gonna go with this look. It's not entirely done, but the rest I'll finish on Photoshop. From here, I send images right to my my Google Drive and download onto my computer. So next up is step 3, which is going to be the formatting. Now when you upload to Amazon, you will need a PDF file of all the items in there compiled together as one. This will be the interior file, and then the cover will be uploaded separately. And there are quite a few ways that you can go about formatting everything, but the 3 easiest that I found to be are using Adobe's InDesign, Canva, and also PowerPoint. And I'm primarily going to talk about InDesign because that's my favorite method of the 3. So I'm going to just go ahead and show you what preset I use when creating new documents. I have it saved so I don't have to type it in every time. The size is 8 by 10. Pages you can add or delete later on, so it doesn't really matter if you get it correct right now. Make sure that facing pages is checked. Next, let's go ahead and look at the margins. This is very, very important. We need to take into account that when Amazon prints their stuff, there's going to be a border around the edges. So you're going to want to make sure that everything fits in there nice and neat. These margins are going to tell you exactly where the borderline cutoff is. We also call this the bleed area. So this is an example of my finalized alpaca layout. I like adding a few tips in the start as well as a little color tester. As you can see, the purple lines are the margins and the blue lines are for the image I've inserted. Everything is kept within the purple lines, so I know they won't be cut off in the printing process, and all the pages are filled, so I know Amazon won't tell me it's been denied. So when I'm satisfied with the layout, I export it to PDF and it's good to go. So if you are using Canva, you would essentially just create a new design and select your size, and you can add up to 100 pages, which is more than enough for a coloring book. And you can actually see the bleed lines by selecting File at the top and choosing to show margins. Unfortunately, with Canva, you can't adjust the margins, and as you can see, they are clearly much larger than the actual cutoff would be. So if you are using Canva as your method, I would try and guesstimate and make the design just a little bit outside of that border. I should note that when you upload it to Amazon, before you publish, you do have to launch a preview to see what it's going to look like. So if there are things outside of the cut lines, you'll be able to see, and you can just go back and redo it. Now when you're finished on Canva, you would do the same thing and download as PDF. Just make sure it is the high quality version. So as for PowerPoint, I'm just going to go ahead and leave a few links down below of other videos going over the process. There are a few extra steps if you are using PowerPoint, but it works just the same in the end. And the reason that I'm not going to be going over it myself is because my computer super slows down when I use any Microsoft program, but that's okay because other people have it covered. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to step 4. So now that we have our interior, we're going to want to move on to the cover. And Amazon actually allows you to download a template where you can select the size of your book and how many pages. And they actually just recently updated it to be a little bit more detailed, which is convenient. But once you download it, it will look like this. It comes with margins and shows the band, so it's important to get the amount of pages correct because the band does change in width depending on if you have more pages or not. Also, we should note this little barcode here. It's going to show on top of whatever artwork you put here, so make sure there's nothing important in this area that you don't want covered. Right side is going to be the front cover, left side is the back of the book. So now I'm just going to add my artwork along with some words. Okay, so here is my finished cover. I'm gonna go ahead and save it as a PDF. And it does have to be PDF if you're gonna upload it to Amazon. It will not take JPEG or PNG or anything like that. So before moving on to the next step, I do want to take a moment to talk about BookBolt, which is probably gonna be the next best thing. BookBolt was specifically designed for KDP. So if you do any kind of low content books, which coloring books are considered, it can play an essential part in the uploading process, which I will get into later on. But for this step, BookBolt also does have its own built-in designer section. So if you don't have access to any programs but you have internet and you don't like Canva for some reason, you can still format your books this way. So on the main page, you would go up here, select create, and choose designer. And when creating a cover, you follow the same steps, enter the size and number of pages, and it'll show you the same thing, front and back sides, the middle part of the band. The only thing missing is the little barcode, but so long as you remember that it'll be there, you should be fine. And you may have noticed when I went to create a new cover, there was also an interior option, which I would highly recommend because it comes with the correct margins already set up for Amazon. And you could technically format your entire book here, but I did leave it out of my top 3 because for coloring books in particular, you are working with like 30 plus different files, and they all need to be mapped out in a certain way, which they do too, but it is a little bit time consuming. However, if you want to make notebooks or planners or any kind of logbook that only has a certain amount of pages, or at least a certain kind of designs, like just regular lines and stuff, I would say that book bolt is actually the fastest way to get it done. But anyway, now that we have finished with the covers, let's go ahead and move on to step 5. So if you do not yet have one, you will need to make an account at kdp.amazon.com, and once that is all set up, you can just go to your bookshelf and click on the add paperback. So before we move on, this is very, very important. Amazon will only let you publish your book with a title that matches whatever is on the cover. So if you make a pink notebook with crocodiles on it and you want to title it Crocodile Notebook, you cannot do that. The words on the cover of the physical book need to match the title that you are going to put in. And you can't add anything extra, but I noticed that you can remove words for some reason. So for example, if it says notebook for kids, you could just technically title it notebook and it would be fine. So yeah, make sure that these two things match. Otherwise they will be like, nah. Now in the subtitle area, you can be a lot more creative. Here is where you can call it pink notebook with crocodiles for girls. Stuff like that. You may have heard the term long tail keyword before. And basically what it does is it takes one main keyword and it turns it into like 3. So planner becomes planner for students, or coloring book becomes unicorn coloring book for kids. But whatever your subtitle is, make sure that it is an accurate description for whatever it is you're putting out. Otherwise, again, Amazon will realize that it doesn't match up and they will ask you to change it, as well as if you just add a bunch of tags and stuff. Now for your author name, you don't have to put your first and last name. You can use any pen name that you want to. If you want it to sound more like a business name, say like Mary Moon's Paper Co., you could just enter that into the last name and it would be fine. But you should check ahead and make sure that nobody else has that name, or that it doesn't interfere with any actual like popular brand. And if you find yourself struggling with the description, it is okay to look for similar items on Amazon. Don't copy, of course, but you can pull little tidbits here and there as inspiration. So the rest is pretty self-explanatory, but here is where I'm going to bring up Book Bolt again. As I said before, they were specifically designed for KDP. So in addition to formatting simpler books, it has all these extra tools that help you figure out what will work best for you. So let's go ahead and search keywords. We can see what's competitive, what people are searching for, what makes more money, and what keywords are probably better to stay away from. So from here, we want to go ahead and niche it down. So I probably wouldn't do kids coloring book. Let's check out alpacas. Alpaca gift seems like a good thing to throw in there. Is it competitive? Yes, but not so much that it's impossible to get out there. So after this, you will need to enter 2 book categories on Amazon, which Book Bolt also helps with. So for the second page, they will ask you about an ISBN, and you can just go ahead and click the button to have them assign you a free one. For the print options, you're probably going to want black and white with white paper for a coloring book. Select the correct size. I always choose bleed just to be safe, and as far as matte and glossy go, it's entirely dependent on your own preferences, really. I'm gonna go for glossy this time because I noticed that most kids coloring books are usually more on the glossy side. So next is to upload your interior and your cover, and this may take a minute. So here you can actually see that Amazon has its own cover creator. I don't use it at all because it runs really, really slow on my computer, and I don't really like how it works. So I just much prefer Photoshop, but if you want to go ahead and check it out, that's totally fine. You know, try it out for yourself before you form your own opinions. So once both are finally uploaded, we are going to go ahead and click on the launch previewer. Now this may take a minute or two, so don't panic if it's taking a while. while. Eventually, it will load and it will let you know if anything is wrong or if you need to fix the margins or if there's some text outside the lines. Mine looks good, so I'm going to approve. Now at the bottom we see what the total cost for the printing is, and it'll change depending on the size of the item, how many pages there are, and whether it's in color or not. I find that what really changes it the most is if the pages inside are colored. That'll definitely make it shoot up like a few dollars. So the third page is all about pricing. Most only add like $1 or $2 for simple coloring books. I think the average royalty per low content book seems to be around like $1.40 to $1.50. If you want to price yours higher, that's totally fine. Of course, people are more likely to buy it if it's cheaper, but you definitely want to be making a profit at least, so figure out what works best for you. Expanded distribution just means literally what it says, and there's really no reason not to check this. If a distributor picks it up, you'll only make a few cents here and there, but it's not really like you're losing anything. But again, it's up to you. So when you're happy with your choices, go ahead and hit publish. Now it says that it takes up to 72 hours in order to get approved, but I found that for coloring books and just other low content books, it can actually take up to maybe like 5 days. So if nothing happens after a few days, it's okay. Don't worry, they will eventually get back to you, either to let you know that there's an issue with it or that it's being published. But once they do send you the email that it's gone through, you should be able to view it on Amazon immediately, but it will take up to a week for the page preview to show. Like, you know how you click on it and you can actually see like a few pages inside, and I think it takes even longer before you're like really in the system and you like show up when people do searches. But on the plus side, now you have something that's out there, and once it's out, that's it. Unless you decide to unpublish it, you always have the chance to earn a little bit of something here and there. So if you want to take it a lot more seriously and you find yourself falling in the line of like the whole low content thing, I will say right off the bat that it takes time, it takes energy, and it takes a lot of books. Like, you need a good amount of product out there, a lot. But I know people who do it personally, so I know that it's possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link down below to BookBolt along with a 20% off discount if you are interested. I highly recommend it for any type of low content publishing. I do use it myself, and I find that it simplifies the hardest part of the process for me, which is pretty much just research ideas, figuring out what's trending, and finding the correct categories and keywords for things, and just overall how to maximize all of that stuff. Like, I cannot accurately express how stressed I used to get when it came to all that stuff. It's really just made the experience so much better for me. I'm able to push out a lot more because it helps save time. So, but anyway, I hope that this was helpful for those of you who were interested. If you have any questions that I failed to mention, go ahead and ask, and I would be happy to answer. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. So thanks so much for watching if you watched, and I will see you next time. Bye!